Hey guys, it's Luke here, and today I'm going to be doing my January reading wrap-up. I read 15 books in January, I think, which is pretty good, especially since I was in school for basically the entire month. So we're just gonna get into it. I decided that I would go back to the monthly wrap-up thing just because it's way easier to talk in depth and more critically about the books that I've read in a month rather than talking about the books that I've read in 2 or 3 months, which I made the mistake of doing multiple times last year. So yeah, hopefully I can keep up with the monthly wrap-up thing. If I don't, then I apologize, but we're gonna start with January. So I read quite a few books this month, so let's just get into it. The first book that I read was Tiny Pretty Things by Sona Charaipotra and Dhonielle Clayton. This book is about these 3 main characters who all go to school at this Manhattan Ballet Academy. And so the first one is Bet, and she is the younger sister to one of the Academy's graduates, I guess you could say. And she's sort of always living in her sister's shadow. The other one is Gigi, who is from California, and she comes to the Academy and she basically starts getting all of the leading roles, and everyone sort of starts to hate her. And then the other character we have is June, and she is always an understudy, and her mother is super strict, and she basically just, she wants to be at the tops, and she actually develops an eating disorder. So we have that, and it's just basically these 3 girls going to this ballet school, and a lot of drama happens. It's pretty good. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think I gave it 4 stars when I first read it, but I lowered it a star just because, thinking back, it was sort of just okay. I might end up reading the sequel, but I might not. I think it was just a fun book. There's not really much substance to it. There is some discussion about race and stuff like that, which I enjoyed because Gigi is black and June is Korean, I think. So that was an interesting discussion, and the discussion about eating disorders and stuff, but for the most part, it was sort of just a drama-filled book, so, not that great. I also watched the show adaptation, and that was a big fat yikes, but we're not going to talk about that. So yeah, I enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was fine. The next book that I read was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This is the prequel to the Lunar Chronicles, and so we follow Queen Lavanna, who is the main antagonist of the series. It's her origin story. It's really short. It's 200 pages. And I gave this 3 stars as well. I thought it was fine. Again, none of this stuff in this surprised me because I already read the 4 books in the Lunar Chronicles, so it was sort of just an added thing. I wouldn't really recommend reading this unless you're a die-hard fan of the Lunar Chronicles. I like the Lunar Chronicles. It's not a favorite series of mine, but this just didn't add much to the story that was already established in the original books, so it kind of fell a little bit flat to me. But, I like Marissa Meyer. I'll read whatever she writes, so this was fine, but it wasn't, anything great, so. Next, I reread A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the 3rd and final book in the Darker Shades of Magic series. So, I was rereading this series because I just felt like it, and so I finally got around to rereading the final book, and I really enjoyed it. I ended up, with A Darker Shade of Magic and A Gathering of Shadows, I ended up actually lowering my rating from 5 to 4 for both of those, but this one, I kept at a full 5. It was so good. I think it's a really, really great finale, and I've still been thinking about it since I read it, and that was in the beginning of the month, so it definitely accomplished that, and I just really enjoy the way that the characters wrapped up. I like the progression of the plot in this story, and I'm just really excited to see where the characters go, because there is going to be a sequel series that's coming out sometime soon, and I'm just very excited. This is my second favorite V.E. Schwab book. My favorite is Addie LaRue, but this one is a close second. I really enjoyed it, and if you have not read the series, I would definitely recommend it, especially since there's going to be a new trilogy coming out, so definitely look out for that. I'm very excited about that because I want to see where the characters go after this. Sorry, I had to change the angle, but the 4th book that I read in the month was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. This is a collection of short stories set in the world of the Lunar Chronicles, and I ended up giving this 3 stars as well. I thought it was just okay. I realized that I'm not the biggest fan of short stories, and again, I feel like I would only really recommend this if you're like a die-hard fan of the Lunar Chronicles. It's not anything special, none of the stories really jumped out at me. They were all just sort of okay. Like, there was nothing really amazing about them, and again, I'm just not the biggest fan of short stories because either I'm bored all throughout, or when I finally get interested, it ends. So, like, what's the point of me reading them? I don't know. I just don't really like short stories. I'm gonna try to, like, avoid them whenever I can, because I've been burned many times before, but I can't really go into what this is about because it would spoil the other Lunar Chronicles books, but, like, a lot of these books are prequels or, like, follow some of the characters that we meet in that, and then there's, like, an epilogue story that is, like, a wedding. Not gonna say whose wedding, but 'twas a wedding, so. Next, I read A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and we follow a girl named Harper who lives in Washington, D.C., and one day she sees this girl, like, getting attacked by this guy, and she tries to, like, defend the girl and, like, tries to fight the guy, and then she ends up in this, like, parallel universe where there is this king, or I guess he's technically the king, but they call him the prince, and his name is Ren, and he was cursed by a witch named Lilith, like, or an enchantress named Lilith a bunch of years ago, and he, the only way that he can turn back into a human, because he, like, transforms into a monster every now and then, and the only way that he can become human again is if a human girl falls in love with him. And so he and his bodyguard, Gray, are, like, the only people left in the kingdom, really, because he has eaten them all, or killed them all. And so Gray has the power to travel between the place that they live, which is called Emberfall, and our world. And so he goes to our world and brings a new girl, and every time she ends up fleeing or he eats her or kills her, and so now we have to deal with Harper, and she, you know, stuff happens. Not really gonna go into much other than that, but it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. You can probably guess where it goes. I really liked this book. I liked how Brigid Kemmerer incorporated, I'm a really big fan of parallel universes, so I like how she incorporated our world with Emberfall. I thought it was an interesting, like an interesting weaving of worlds. I thought it was quite interesting. And also, I just really liked her writing. I think she's really good at writing fantasy worlds, so that was interesting. I liked the characters, I liked the progression of plot, even though it was pretty predictable, because it was basically just copy and paste Beauty and the Beast. But, other than that, I really, really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I am interested in continuing on with the series. Next, I read Across the Green Grass Fields by Sona and McGuire. This is the 6th book in the Wayward Children series, and in this series, we basically follow different children who go to these magical worlds, and then when they come back to our world, they are sent to Eleanor West's home for wayward children, where they are basically, like, snapped back to reality. This story follows a girl named Reagan who, like, flees because, like, leaves her world because her friend finds something out about her and then makes fun of her, and so she leaves our world and comes across this doorway that tells her to be sure, and then she basically gets consumed by it, and she ends up in this world called the Hooflands, where there are, like, centaurs and unicorns and all these different creatures, and she basically has to navigate it. I enjoy this series. I'm gonna keep reading it just as every new installment comes out, but I have basically accepted that I'm never going to, like, love these books because, one, they are just way too short. Like, these books could honestly be, like, 400 to 500 pages. Like, they are really complex, and, like, it's just virtually impossible to, like, include a full, well-rounded story in, like, 150 pages, which is what Sona and McGuire tries to do, and I just don't think it is well accomplished, or, like, accomplished at all. It's fine. Like, I gave this book 3 stars. There's nothing really, like, inherently wrong with it. I just find it deeply okay, and I just don't understand why there are so many, like, stans for this series, because it is just fine. Like, there's nothing really, like, that I absolutely love, and every single time I'm like intrigued by one of the synopses and I get really excited for the new book, and then I read it and I'm underwhelmed literally every single time. So I don't know why I keep doing this to myself, but like, again, it wasn't bad, although I do feel like this had the clunkiest plot of all the books in the series, because it was like super slow and then it got so fast in like the last 2 chapters, and I was just like, I like felt like it was like breakneck speed and it was just not well developed at all, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, I need something else, and I just was a little bit underwhelmed, so that's upsetting. But I did get an arc of this from the publisher, so thank you so much to them. This book came out on January 6th, I think? I don't know. It just says January 2021 on my arc, so I don't know, but like, I will continue on with the series because I am trash. Next, I reread an entire trilogy. I reread the Truly Devious series by Maureen Johnson. I'm gonna put them down. But the Truly Devious series follows a girl named Stevie Bell, and basically she is a true crime aficionado, and she has been really interested in the Ellingham case, which was a murder from the 1930s, where a tycoon named Albert Ellingham created this school called Ellingham Academy, which was like a place for learning, and like basically if you have like a prodigy, you can be admitted for free, and it's only a handful of students that get admitted every single year, so it's highly selective. And basically this tycoon, one night his wife and daughter go missing, and a few days after that his wife's body is discovered, but his daughter is never seen again. And so the case basically went cold. Someone did confess, but it was like, basically nobody actually believed that he did it, and so basically the case went cold, and our main character, Stevie Bell, is in present day, and she actually gets admitted into Ellingham Academy because she is a detective. She wants to solve the crime, and while she's there, one of her classmates gets murdered, and so basically she has this double murder, like she has this murder in present day, and also she's trying to figure out what happened in the 1930s, and it is just a really, really good series. It's one of my favorite series of all time. I read Truly Devious like 4 times. I read The Vanishing Stair 3 times, and this is my 2nd time reading The Hand on the Wall. I just love all 3 books. I just think they're so good. If you have not read this series, what are you doing with your life? It is honestly so good. It's like, it's one of the best series that I've ever read. And it's just, like, please read it if you have not. It is just, they are just, like, so amazing, and I cannot wait for the 4th book that is coming out. Oh my god, I'm so excited. It is just one of my favorite series of all time. Please pick it up if you have not. I can't even go into how much I love this series. I really do want to do like a full in-depth review at some point, but I just love everything about the series. The writing, the characters, the plot, everything is just so amazing. Please, please, please read it. Next, I did another reread. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Jenkins Reid, another one of my favorite books. This follows a journalist named Monique who basically gets a call. She works at this magazine company called Vivant, and she gets a call from Evelyn Hugo, who was a giant movie star back in the 50s and 60s, and she wants Monique to do an interview with her. When Monique gets to Evelyn's house, Evelyn says that she actually wants an authorized biography, and she wants Monique to write it, and Monique has no idea why. She's not like a super famous journalist or anything. She's just like sort of starting out, and so the book follows Monique as she's interviewing Evelyn, and also Evelyn as she is telling her story. And it is just so good. And oh, also I forgot to mention, Evelyn had 7 husbands, and that's like one of the most mysterious parts of her life. So the book is divided up into each husband that she had, and it sort of goes into the circumstances that caused her to have all 7 of those husbands, and then in the end you find out why she wanted Monique to interview her. And it is just perfection. This is one of my favorite books of all time. You've probably heard about it 1,000 times, but it is just so good. Jenkins Reid is like one of the best, like one of the authors that does characters the best. I think she is just a master of it. She is just so amazing at creating characters and developing them. Evelyn really feels like a real person. All of the characters do. Even side characters that are like mentioned in passing, all of her 7 husbands feel real. It is just so good, and I love it. I love the progression of the plot. I love the old Hollywood thing. I really am interested in like Hollywood and stuff like that, so reading about it was super interesting. And if you somehow have not read this book, please do so, because it is just so amazing, and I loved it. So, 5 out of 5 stars. Next we have kind of a damper. I read Ghosts of the Shadow Market by Cassandra Clare, Cerise Brennan, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link, and Robin Wasserman. This is a short story collection in the Shadowhunters universe. I know I just said I didn't want to read short stories anymore, but I had this, and I do want to read all the books in the Shadowhunter Chronicles, and so I was like, let me just get this over with. I want to read it before Chain of Iron comes out, and if I don't read it now, I'm never going to. So, I read it, and I actually kind of enjoyed it a lot more than I was thinking I was going to. I read the other short story collections in this series, and didn't really love them, but this was better. I will say though, like the first half of the book where like we have some of the historical stories, because it's written, the stories are organized in chronological order, so the last one that started, like the last one that was interesting to me was the Wicked Ones. That was where I sort of started to like lose interest, but it was still historical, so I was like, I'm interested. And that was on page like 200. And then we got to like some of the ones that were taking place in like the 2000s, and then we got more and more to like present day. And I just wasn't feeling it. Like, I was just so bored. I didn't care. I didn't love the stories that were set in present day. And I don't know why. I just didn't care at all. I just like really could not have cared less. And literally the longest story in this book was 100 pages, and it was the one that I liked the least. I don't know how that works, but I just wasn't a fan, okay? I just wasn't a fan, I'm not interested. I really hope that there aren't any more short story collections in, like, that are going to come out in this universe, because please no, because I know I'm going to force myself to read it anyway, so yeah. Also, this book is like 600 something pages. It was way too long for a short story collection. I started getting so bored by the end, and it was just, I was not a fan. So 3 stars because I liked the beginning stories, but it's like a low 3 stars. So yes, I just, I can't. I don't like the books that Cassandra Clare doesn't write solo. So I really just want Chain of Iron to come out. That is the consensus, I guess. The next book that I read was The Library Book by Susan Orlean. This is a non-fiction book, and it is basically about the 1986 fire that destroyed a bunch of books at the Los Angeles Central Library, I think it was called. And so it burned over 400,000 books, and it damaged over 700,000 more, because the ones that weren't burned in the fire were damaged because of all the water that the firemen had to like pour onto the library. And it basically like weaves in the history of libraries with like the true crime aspect, as the authors sort of try to figure out who could have caused the fire, if it was arson, if it was purposeful or not. And it is just really, really interesting. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was just a really well-crafted book. It really felt like a novel at points. Like, I felt like I was reading a fictional book, because it was just so, it felt like the way that the author writes is like a fictional author. Like, the way that a fictional author does. Like, I wouldn't have really, like, I know it's nonfiction, but it doesn't feel that way, and it was just a really, really good book. I liked the way that all of the, I just really enjoyed it, okay? And, I did have a few complaints, though, where, I actually ended up liking the true crime aspect of the story less than the other parts, which was interesting, because I actually suspected that that was what I would be interested in the most, but I wasn't. I was more interested in, the history of the libraries and just how everything works in the library, and I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but also I did feel like the chapters were a little bit clunky. It was just, the organization of the chapters, it could have been better organized, and I was just not a big fan of, the order of the chapters and like how they came and like you know what I mean? You know what I mean. But that could just be because I don't read a lot of nonfiction and I like when chapters are more linear, so that could be why. But overall, I really enjoyed this book. And also, side note, I was like researching the author, just trying to figure out what other books she had written, and I found out that she is literally a character in Adaptation, which is the movie from like 2002 with Nicolas Cage, and basically it is like an adaptation of one of her nonfiction books, and Meryl Streep plays Susan Orlean, the author of the book. Like, what? I had no idea that that was a thing, but that is very cool. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Sorry, I got on a tangent. But I really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I am interested in maybe reading more of her books. I don't know. We shall see. The next book that I read was Sparkling Cyanide by Agatha Christie. This is one of her standalone novels, and it basically is about these like 6 characters who, like, a little bit previously to the book starting, were at this dinner with a woman named Rosemary, and they all were sort of like connected to her in some way. And they were at this dinner with her, and then at one point in the dinner, the lights go out, and Rosemary is dead. And so we start the book a little bit after that, and basically, partway through the book, someone organizes a dinner that is like supposed to mirror that dinner that happened with Rosemary, and there is an empty seat that was like for Rosemary, and there's a sprig of rosemary on the table, and it's like rosemary for remembrance. And then another person dies at this dinner, and I ended up giving this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, although it was a little bit weird, because I was expecting the death with, like, Rosemary's death to be actually in the book, but the book takes place after that death has already happened. And it made the narrative feel a little bit passive, and I wanted it to be more active, and it was just kind of hard to keep my attention. Like, I noticed that in the beginning, like, the first 2 sections of the book, because the book is divided into 3 parts, so, like, the first half of the book, it was really hard to, like, keep my attention fastened on the book. Like, I just kept getting distracted. I could not, like, just, like, pay attention to what was going on. And I felt like, I don't know if it was the book or if it was just my, like, mental state, because I was reading this during, like, the end of my, like, one of my school's marking periods, and it was just, like, a very stressful time. So I don't know if it was that or if it was the actual book, but it's not my favorite Agatha Christie. I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was anything extraordinary, and I do wish that we got to see Rosemary's death, because that's how the synopsis kind of made it seem, and I felt like I was just a little bit misled, and I'm not the biggest fan of, like, passive narratives. I don't really like reading about books, reading books where, like, there was a murder and it's not actually, like, we don't actually get to see it play out. Like, even with Truly Devious, like, the murder happened in the past, but there are sections of the book where we actually get to see it happen in real time, and so, like, it doesn't feel passive like this book does. So, I don't know, I feel like it could have been just altered a little bit so that the plot, like, was more active, and it didn't feel like, it felt like I missed something, you know? Like, it almost felt like this book could have used a prologue, where, like, we got, like, even that would have been good, where, like, it was like a prologue, and we got to see Rosemary's death, and then the book was just, like, as it was. So, maybe that could have made it better, I don't know. But overall, I did enjoy it, and I would still recommend it. Agatha Christie's my girl, and I will continue to read her books until I've read all of them. That's, like, my life goal, so it was enjoyable, it was fine, but it wasn't, like, a standout Christie for me. Okay, we're almost done, I promise. The next book that I read was When She Reigns by Jodi Meadows. This is the 3rd and final book in the Fallen Isles trilogy, which follows, the first book follows a girl named Mira, who was basically the image, or like I don't know, she was like the creator of this thing called the Mira Treaty, which was like a thing to, you know, just protect the Fallen Isles. And the book basically follows her as she has been thrown in something called the Pit, which is like the most highly guarded prison in the Fallen Isles. And we don't really know why she's there, and then just, you know, stuff happens. And obviously I can't talk about the plot of this book because it would be spoilery, but I really, really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it had the best pacing of any book in the series. It was just, it had my attention the entire time. I was super into the book, and I just wanted to know what would happen, and I just really, really enjoyed my time reading this book. I think it had the really great character development. The writing, as always, was really good. I really enjoyed Jodi Meadows' writing. The plot, again, as I said, was really, really well done, and it just had my attention. I was rapt. I could not stop reading at some point. Something else that I liked about this book was that book 1 we're basically in the pit the entire time. Book 2 we do get to see more of the Fallen Isles, and in this book we actually go outside of the Fallen Isles to something called the Algadi Empire, and I really liked that, and I liked the introduction of a new character, which is the Algadi Empire Empress, and I just really liked how many dragons there were in this book, because this was the most dragon-heavy book in the entire series, and I just really, really enjoyed that aspect of the story. It was just really, really enjoyable, and I really want to reread this series because I think it is just criminally underrated. It is so good. It is one of the best YA fantasy series. Honestly, hands down. I think it is so consistent in its quality, and it is just really, really good. And y'all are sleeping on it, so please get on it. It is so good. It is just really, really enjoyable. The only complaint that I have with the book is the ending. It was a little too ambiguous for me to really enjoy it. I mean, I still enjoyed the book overall, but the ending was just the whole series is pretty slow, and there's a lot of build-up, and then the ending just sort of happened, and I was a little bit disappointed, to be honest, but you know, what you gonna do? I can't really do much about that, but it was fine. It wasn't a deterrent to the story. It didn't lower my rating at all, really. It was just an aspect of the story that I think could have been done better. So I feel if we had just one chapter, maybe an epilogue to just wrap things up a little bit nicer, then I feel this book would have been even better. So it was just a small thing, but it was just something that I wanted to point out. Okay, and then the final book that I read in January was Am I Overthinking This? By Michelle Rial. This is basically just a book over answering life's question in 101 charts. It's basically just, here, how do I show this to you? I don't know. But it's basically just these charts that see, you know, it's just cutesy stuff. I thought this book would be more of a self-help book of telling you how you shouldn't be overthinking this. But it was basically just the author talking about what she overthinks, and I was like, girl, you are really not helping me. You're probably just stressing me out even more. So yeah, it was just a book I would probably just reread in the future, maybe if I'm just, you know, just if I want something interesting, but you know, we got it on vacation for it was just something it's a book that you would just sort of flip through but not read on a critical level, you know what I mean? So it was good. I didn't rate it, but it was fine. I don't really have much else to say. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. All my social media links are in the description box below. If you've read any of the books that I read in January, let me know. We can talk about it in the comment section. What books did you guys read in January? I'd love to know. So yeah, that is it for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!